So these three mistakes, I'll give you a little bit of a backdrop and a reference point so you can understand. Number one cost me a little over $2 million, real dollars, and 5 years of lost wages on top of that. So imagine the time frame is 2005 to 2010. And in that 5-year period, it ended up being a negative $2 million plus no pay for 5 years. So what you're going to learn here, like some of the numbers you're going to see on the spreadsheet might just look like numbers to most people or to you all, but for somebody that's actually not underwritten debt properly, these numbers actually mean something completely different. So let's just jump right in with these three. First mistake, don't make long-term investments with short-term money. Don't make long-term investments with short-term money. So what most people are usually looking at when they look at debt financing, they're usually looking at the interest rate, but nobody ever really talks about the loan constant. So when you actually look at here, the 2.75% interest rate is the lowest interest rate, but it's got the highest loan constant. So the best way to understand this, imagine right now I said to you, I'm going to loan you X amount of dollars at 4%, and you're going to go invest it for a dividend-paying stock. Pick your favorite dividend-paying stock, and it's going to earn 3%. So you're going to pay me 4% on the debt, and you're going to go invest it for a dividend of 3%. Like, how many people in this room would do that? But the reality is 99% of homeowners do it every day, and the majority of business people do it every single day too. So that first spread is you're in negative leverage. The only reason you would ever do that is if you thought for whatever reason that that company or that stock or that scenario was going to shoot through the roof. You'd be willing to take the losses for a short period of time because you would make it up on the appreciation leverage, which we're going to talk about here in a couple slides. The appreciation leverage, that's when you actually want to look at the interest rate, because you're going to look at the spread between the interest rate and how well the asset is growing over time. But the first thing you got to look at is this vector, because this vector affects cash flow. So the first thing that I didn't have when I opened up my first business in 2005, which was a dental office, was a loan constant calculator. And even if somebody had given me this, I wouldn't know what the hell to do with it. So now I know what to do with it. So I had 5 loans to build that business. I'm giving you like a real world example here, not just the F up, but the real world example so you can understand the context. The break-even points on that business were 41 grand a month. So $41,000 a month were the break-even points. That did not include a salary for me. So $14,000 roughly per month were bank loans. $6,700 roughly per $7,000 roughly per month was rent on 1,800 square feet, and that was in Frankfort, Illinois. So when you look at the 5 loans that I initiated and put together to create that business, one was a $400,000 loan from Bank of America. There was a $195,000 loan from GE. There was a $52,000 loan, a $32,000 loan. I can't remember who they were. But the reality is when you start looking at the loan constants of these loans, look at the year, the years, 9-year, 7-year, 5-year, and 5-year terms. And I had no patience. We actually started from ground zero with no patience. We didn't buy practice. So you have 0 revenue and your burn rate's 41 grand a month, and you need to basically cover that spread. Like, it's like using a credit card. Now, the only reason you would do that is why you would think that the business is going to offset that with appreciation. So I'm going to show you the 5th loan right now. Next to the 5th loan, you're going to see roughly the 800,000. These 5 loans equate to about 792,000, 800,000 roughly. So the one on the left is the last of the 5. That had a 5-year, oh, that was a 12-year. So I wasn't getting completely crushed on that one. Oh yeah, I was actually. Look at the 12, it was a 25.2% loan constant. So you basically are using credit cards, you're losing $800,000 with the credit cards basically. And now what you have is a scenario on the right where if you understand these kinds of mathematics and you can find a way to extend the term on the loan, even if you're paying a little higher on interest, your 10.5% loan constant is a little bit more amenable. It's easier. It's better than 20%. So now all of a sudden you have a scenario where I'd be loaning you, money at 4% and you'd be investing it at like 3.5%. You're still negative potentially, but it's a little bit of a less hurdle that you've got to overcome. So now What that leads into is, as if this wasn't really bad enough, now what you're relying on is that what maybe some people, I don't believe in luck, but you might want to call it the luck vector, the appreciation of the asset. So there's three components when you're using leverage, which I found out the hard way. The first component was what we just saw a moment ago. It's the spread between basically the dividend and that loan constant. The next vector is the spread between the interest rate and the local market appreciation. So if you have a $100,000 value asset and it goes up 3% next year, it's worth 103. A year after that, it's worth 106 and some change, et cetera, et cetera. So when you use the appreciation leverage calculator, what you're trying to do is determine if you borrow money at an interest rate of 3.38% on the left, and you borrow money at an interest rate of 3.38% on the right, the only thing you're going to change in this scenario is what happens if the market appreciation is 3% on your asset value versus 2%. Because if you're appreciating at 3% per year, at the end of year one, you're worth 103. At 2%, you're worth 102, 104, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do a sensitivity just to kind of do basic math and see where you're at. Because remember, if you don't underwrite the debt properly and your loan constant is like a credit card and you have a negative spread on that vector, the only other vector that's going to save you is the spread between the interest rate and the market appreciation. And then the third vector is taxes. So you're using debt. You know, the IRS creates these rules, or not rules, but this way of conducting business where they like basically want businesses to, or individuals to take on debt because they leave us no choice, you know, because you can use the write-offs to help you offset income. So that's the game. Exact same scenario. You drop the market appreciation on that asset by just 1%. Look at what happens. You'll see negative L in the leverage column, negative L. In the fifth year, in this scenario, this is just an example of leverage. In the fifth year, you have positive leverage, which means your asset value has increased roughly $50,900, and the cumulative interest you're paying on the loan is $50,300. So when you're taking on heroin, what I call it, or steroids, that's what debt is. You're taking a drug to amplify your results. So if I said to you, I'm going to inject you with steroids, but you're not going to build any muscle no matter how hard you work out, you'd be like, well, why am I going to take steroids then? Well, this is what that looks like, because you change that market appreciation. If your business flattens out, and if you're an existing business, and let's say you're buying a business and you're taking on debt to do that, and you've got to take that next business to the next level, if you don't understand these metrics and you don't hit your numbers, what's going to end up happening is it's going to take you 22 years for the cumulative asset value to increase before you actually are surpassing the cumulative interest paid on your loan. So in that second vector, if you didn't underwrite the first part right and your luck vector doesn't kick in, like you're in big trouble. Ask me how I know, a little over $2 million. So, because what's happening is the bank's going to start calling those loans due. And when the bank starts calling the loans due, you're going to have to figure out a way to either file bankruptcy, which I didn't do, or you're going to have to figure out a way to rob from Peter to pay Paul. You know, and that's going to be very hard, especially between 2005 to 2010 when I was trying to rob from Peter to pay Paul for all those years. It got harder to do that in 2009 and 2010. So the solution is you need to learn how to raise private capital. Never make a personal guarantee, because if they require it, because keep in mind, it's a dishonest handshake. Let me see, how am I doing on time? It's a dishonest handshake. The bank doesn't actually have the money that they loan you. They print it. It's not like 500 years ago where people would deposit money and the bank would lend out the depositors money. It doesn't work like that anymore. So they want you to leverage and pledge your assets, and they're loaning you fiat currency. So it's a very dishonest handshake. So you have to be very mindful of when you're making personal guarantees with if it's a hard assets, as far as brick and mortar location, the landlord may want a personal guarantee. You have to try to figure out a way to lower that or reduce it. And because in that scenario, I ended up giving that business away in 2010 for $0 to a doctor just to come in and take it over, with no debt, by the way. I got the last loan taken care of. But my burn rate had eaten me up so badly, I was like, I'm done. So what ended up happening is I had several hundred patients scheduled for their hygiene visits for months out. I had an orthodontist in the practice one Friday a month too. So it's not like you can just say, hey, let the whole place go up in shambles. I had a personal guarantee with the landlord for 10 years. I ate up 5 of those years. My rent was, like I said, roughly $7,000 a month, so it's $84,000 a year. So I had 5 years that I've gone through out of my 10. I got 5 years remaining on my guarantee with the landlord. So the landlord is, I am on the hook with the landlord now for $400,000. And they didn't have office condos down the street when I had first opened it. So the doctor that came in, if they were going to take over the patient base, they would have just opened up one of the office condos that had been built in the time I was there. So not only did I make a poor decision, I effed up big time underwriting the debt. I effed up big time with the personal guarantee with the landlord. So you really need to be mindful of like all these little things. Now, learn how to buy a customer real quick. I'm not saying buy leads, although you can do that. You have to learn how to create your own customer. Like if you're a dental or medical office and you're relying on the insurance company to send you customers, you're doing that at a discounted rate because of the write-offs or the adjustments for what you can earn. If you can't go to Facebook right now and run a campaign and get people to start conversations with you for your product, then in my opinion, you don't have a business. And just that's my opinion. So number 2 problem, which leads to the number 2 problem, which I didn't know anything about back then. I'll tell you another story on this. 2009, 2010 was coming. I knew I was getting beat up really bad. I thought I had $25,000 I needed to do a marketing campaign. But I really didn't understand marketing, to be quite honest with you. I was running $2,000 a month, which is paid up front with a yellow book. So I had a double truck ad. I was doing 1-800-Dentist. I was doing all these other things. And I was approached by like one of the Chicago radio stations. Hey, why don't you do an ad with us? It was like $8,000 a month for like 3 months. So I don't know why I settled on whitening ad. Completely useless. Meanwhile, I was talking to a gentleman at the Hancock building who does SEO. And it's 2009-ish. Facebook hadn't really started, although I had been hearing about it. And I was just real cynical about it. I just didn't really listen to what my patients were like doing as far as their social stuff. The guy was trying to explain to me SEO, but I did not understand SEO. So what does that mean? I went and paid $8,000 a month for 3 months to do a radio ad in 2009 when everything's going digital, right? Because I didn't know any better. So that's why I say the solution to that is you need to monitor the marketing game. You need to know the game. You need to know who the players are, the data players. Like with a show of hands, I bet most people probably have never heard of a company called LiveRamp in the identity resolution space. But you've all probably heard of Oracle. Okay, LiveRamp is bigger than Oracle in the data game. So knowing your differentiator, because if you're going to run marketing campaigns, you actually have to have a value proposition, something that people are going to be wanting to come and spend money on your business. So Facebook is your friend. Believe me, I did not think that in 2007, 8, 9. And I promised myself I would never let that ever happen to me again. So what I did was I retired out of dentistry in 2010. I'm still licensed to pursue real estate and marketing full time because I told myself I have to figure out what I didn't know. So I retired from doing something that I actually really liked. But the reality is I'm like that marketing thing and that business development thing, that thing that I couldn't figure out that cost me just $2-point-something million. I need to go figure out what the hell that is. So the third and final one is short. Don't take off your cross. All right. So there's a reason why Lionel Messi does his cross after he scores every goal. Okay. I used to tell people I believe in skill and I believe in God in that order. I don't believe in luck. And I would tell them skill first. You got to have skill. God's important, but you need skill. And then in 2010, I did a debrief. And I said, let me figure out, and I looked back on all the years since I was like a little kid. What did I do all the years leading up to what I got to in that point that were always making me successful? And then I started putting it together and realizing where did it kind of start to tinker off and tailor off. And I thought to myself, you know what? I got the order wrong. It's like I believe in God and skill in that order. Because you can have all the skill that you want. And if you think that it's going to take luck, you can't get lucky enough times to make a successful business. There's a lot of important things that have to happen a lot of times in order to create a successful business. So that one right there is probably should be the first slide, and it would probably cover the whole thing. You'd be fine with that alone. Other than that, thank you very much for your time.